single psilocybin experience has caused many people to give up smoking from that day forward and without any problem. That's just kind of remarkable. When it comes to the war on drugs, the drugs are winning. Hi, I'm Michael Pollan, and I'm here at Penguin to answer some big questions. So psychedelics, how safe are they, is a question that I explored at some length. I was in my late 50s when I decided to use them, so I wasn't at that risk-taking 20-year-old like, yeah, let's try it. So I did my due diligence, and I was really surprised by what I found out. Compared to most drugs, the classical psychedelics, and I'm talking here of psilocybin, LSD, DMT, which is the chemical that's in ayahuasca, are remarkably non-toxic. There is no known lethal dose, believe it or not, of either LSD or psilocybin. You can't say that about many drugs. There are drugs you buy over the counter at the drugstore, things like acetaminophen, that are fatal, at like 20 or 25 tablets. The second surprise was that the classical psychedelics are not habit-forming. And this has been demonstrated in those classic animal experiments where they set the rat up with two levers and one administers the drug to their bloodstream and one administers saline solution or sugar. If you set that up with heroin or cocaine, the rat will press the lever over and over and over again until it's either addicted or dead. You put LSD in that setup, the rat will try it once and will never go near it again. That's not to say that there are no risks. There are risks. There is the risk of having an absolutely horrifying, terrible, endless experience. A very small number of people, but a real number of people can have a psychotic break and that can take a long time to recover from. Anyone at risk of schizophrenia or some other personality disorders is advised not to go near psychedelics. So they're definitely not for everyone. But the risks are psychological, they're not biological. And I think that's important for people to understand. So one of the most surprising applications of psychedelics is in the treatment of addiction. The idea that you could use one drug to cure an addiction to another might seem a little counterintuitive, but that's only because we lump all drugs together. And drugs, are very different substances. There's a bunch of chemicals that, because of the drug war, we lump together under illicit or prescription or over-the-counter. And these distinctions are kind of meaningless. We have to take them each on their own terms, especially the illicit drugs, many of which turn out have therapeutic value. So in the case of treating addiction, there have been some remarkable successes. Going back to the 50s, LSD was used often to treat alcoholism. A recent meta-analysis was done of all those studies done back in the 50s, and they found that about 50% of cases there was a cure of alcoholism. That's pretty remarkable success rate. We don't really have treatments that work that well. Ongoing right now, a very large trial of psilocybin, the chemical in magic mushrooms, to treat alcoholism at NYU in New York City. From everything I've heard, talking to the researchers, is showing very good results. There are completed studies looking at cigarette addiction, treating that with psilocybin, and that's gotten terrific results, much better than any treatment we have out there. A single psilocybin experience has caused many people to give up smoking from that day forward and without any problem. That's just kind of remarkable. And I've interviewed several of those volunteers in those trials, and they described to me having a new perspective on their lives, that as if the camera were pulled further back than it ever had been. And they saw what they were doing and this habit of theirs in a whole new light. And sometimes they would say things as kind of banal as like, and I realized that shortening my life with cigarettes was really stupid, that there were so many things to live for, and what was I doing? Now, any smoker, any addict has had precisely that thought at some point, but it wasn't sticky, right? They don't seem like opinions or ideas of the moment. They seem like revealed truths. And so whatever you think, whatever ideas you have, whatever resolutions you make on psychedelics appear to have particular force, and you can rely on them going forward. And that seems to be what's happening with the cigarette smokers. So I'm interested in all psychoactive substances. I think it's a really curious aspect of our humanity that all humans like to change consciousness. And most of us do it by using plants, these amazing plants that have evolved these compounds, these alkaloids that for some reason kind of interlock with receptor networks in our brain. It's an astonishing fact that a plant can make a chemical that can change your experience of consciousness. And that is to say, you are probably, like 90% of people on Earth, involved with caffeine on a daily basis. A very powerful and interesting, and I think wonderful drug, found in coffee and tea and chocolate, and most sodas, by the way, have caffeine added to them, just to make sure we get kids off on the right foot and get them addicted before they're 10. In the case of caffeine, though, it has a relatively clean bill of health. I looked into it for my chapter on caffeine, and This Is Your Mind on Plants, and I was really surprised at what I found. I mean, that coffee and tea are protective against several kinds of cancers. People who use it regularly have lower rates of those cancers, cardiovascular disease as well, Parkinson's disease, a whole raft of things. Caffeine also improves your focus, your endurance, your memory. If you study for a test and then have a cup of coffee or tea, you will do better on that test because you will hold that information. The endurance of athletes is improved by caffeine. The only serious negative that I was able to find is that caffeine disturbs your sleep, or can disturb your sleep. I mean, everybody knows that to some extent, but even if you're one of those rare people who can have coffee after dinner and fall asleep, there's a kind of sleep you may not be getting enough of. It's called slow wave. It's not REM sleep. It's not when you're dreaming. It's really deep. And it's a very important kind of sleep for kind of brain hygiene. It's when your brain clears out all the crap from the day, files memories away, loses some stuff. It's a kind of editing function. And without that kind of sleep, you can suffer some adverse effects. If you knock off coffee and tea before noon, you can pretty much, not have a problem. But it's important to understand that even the cup of coffee you drink at noon or tea, 25% of the caffeine in it will still be circulating at midnight. So it has a long half-life in your body. But aside from that issue, if you're sleeping well and getting deep sleep, there are more benefits than risks to drinking coffee and tea. Which is not to say that if you're having like 7 cups or more a day, there are problems. And in fact, your risk of suicide goes up after 7 cups. So be careful. When it comes to the war on drugs, the drugs are winning. We have achieved very little in terms of reducing the health problems connected to drugs, the social problems connected to drugs. In many ways, we've made them worse. The drug war was sold to us as a public health initiative. The Controlled Substances Act, which classified all these drugs and banned quite a few of them, including psychedelics, the basic structure of that law became the basis of many of the international drug treaties. So other countries are obliged to follow our really ill thought out lead. But although we were told it was a public health initiative, it's since been revealed by people who worked for Nixon that in fact it was really about politics. John Ehrlichman, his domestic policy advisor, gave a quote to an interviewer years after Nixon died. Our great problem as an administration was with the hippies and the blacks, as he put it. And we knew that if we prohibited cannabis and LSD, we could disrupt both those communities. And if you think about it, it's an amazing tool for the police to have cannabis be illegal, because you can go into a community, and it was usually a black community, and find it on people's person, in people's cars, in people's homes. And as soon as you found it, you had the ability to lock them up if you wanted to, disrupt the community in any way. Drug crimes are very easy to prove. You have the drugs, you have the person, they're guilty. It takes a lot more police work to prove other kinds of crimes. So the police loved it. When you hear about mass incarceration and that problem and the fact that the U.S. has more prisoners per capita than any country in the world, that's all drug crime. It contributed to the erosion of our civil liberties. We have asset forfeiture laws where any piece of property connected to a drug crime, that could be your house, it could be your car, the police can seize it and take it away from you without any due process. They don't have to prove you did anything. But has this curbed drug use? No. In the middle of this drug war, in fact, at the very height of this drug war in the late 1990s, a moment I write about in This Is Your Mind on Plants, because I got caught up in it briefly, There was a company called Purdue Pharmaceuticals that introduced OxyContin. This is in 1996. They promoted this very aggressively as a safer opiate. They persuaded doctors that they were under-prescribing opiates, that they should not only be used in the case of surgery or serious injury, but they should be used for back pain and workplace injuries, and we're under-treating pain. And with the result that opiates were prescribed in huge numbers under the illusion that this was a safer kind of opiate, which it was not. It was just as addictive as any other. And this began the opioid crisis. So the biggest public health problem tied to drugs in this whole period since 1970 was created by legal drugs, not illegal drugs. Meanwhile, the illegality of this class of drugs has absolutely destroyed civil society in Mexico, in Colombia, has led to the rise of drug kingpins. The destruction is immense. I'm encouraged that the drug war seems to be losing its political support. It'll take a while, but in the United States, you see initiative after initiative, state by state, to decriminalize drugs, in some cases make them legal. And so I think we're turning away from it. And I think in 10 years' time, we'll look back and realize what a folly it was. I don't know. I can't say. Nothing in my psychedelic experience has convinced me either way. I have to say it's not a question I think about a lot because I don't know that we can answer it. I have had profound spiritual experiences on psychedelics, but they're perfectly naturalistic to me. I mean, they don't seem like proof of a beyond or an other realm or any kind of divine realm. But many people do. Many people have close encounters with a divine of some kind. Many people meet God on psychedelics. It hasn't happened to me yet. I'll let you know. Thanks for watching. You can get my books, This Is Your Mind on Plants and How to Change Your Mind, in paperback, ebook, and audio by clicking on the link below in the descriptions. Don't forget to click here to subscribe to see more videos like this.